It was a government program, bounty hunts to protect livestock, that led to the gray wolf's disappearance. Now, another government program looks to protect them. Ranchers worry about the risk to livestock, but environmentalists say wolves are necessary for a balanced ecosystem.
So this is the collar, the same type of collar that OR7 is wearing, and that a good number of the wolves that we collar are wearing. What these collars do is they store information, then they upload it to our system so we can see over the last, say, 24 hours or 48 hours where this animal has been. So when I started, we didn't know of any known wolves in the state of Oregon. And now we have a number of packs and clearly an established and expanding population. And because the wolves are a secretive carnivore, the collars and the data that we get from those collars really becomes very important. Wolves are known to live by their feet, and they're great travelers. Like a lot of bird species and other large carnivores can travel large distances, and wolves really travel. And OR7 would be a perfect example.
OR7, this is where he spent his youth. The Imnaha Pack has an area of about 1,200 square miles that they claim as their range.
You know, I'm asked often two things. How did we capture, and tell us about that capture? And the other one is, why don't we have photographs of OR7? I think it was 13 below zero when we took off in the morning. I couldn't operate the camera. I was just too cold.
When wolves moved into Oregon, they moved onto a different landscape, socially, ecologically, and politically as well.
We as cattlemen didn't want them here at all to begin with. It puts us in a kind of an awkward place to where we become the villains.
This wolf didn't need a GPS or a satellite to find his way around. He found it by instinct. And most likely, he traveled places that prior wolves decades ago traveled.
Who knows where that wolf will go next? Maybe he'll go to California. And I thought, like, my God, don't say that. Like, you're just gonna freak people out. That'll never happen. And sure enough, you know, a couple weeks later, there he was in California.
Wolf OR7, from the moment he came across the border, has been an incredible source of hope and inspiration.
It would not have surprised me if OR7 had lived his whole life by himself and his genetics wouldn't go anywhere. They'd be a dead end, if you will. But it's also possible that what has happened now occurs.
Hi Jamie, how are you doing?
Good, welcome back.
Thank you.
Central
It's really
Oregon.
good to be back here.
We're leaving tomorrow. So it's like, oh my gosh,
Galileo.
logistics.
Yeah.
Figure out.
Oh, this is exciting.
It's nice to sit.
Yeah.
My name is Rachel. I was born and raised in Oregon, and I am a storyteller, an outdoor educator, and have a background in natural resource science. One day during a walk in the park, I remembered Wolf OR7, who had been on the news in 2011 when he came across Oregon, and thought, ooh, that'd be cool to see Oregon like he did. And at the time, I thought I would do this by myself. The lone woman follows the lone wolf. Next thing, I got a hold of my friend Galileo, and he said, well, if you do this, I'll come. And I said, well, if you come, I'll do it.
Rachel's phone call was very serendipitous because I find myself at this point in my life committing my life to addressing human-wildlife conflict and trying to transform conflict where it occurs in relation to conservation action. This is a no-brainer. This is a magical story. It's filled with the complexities of what one has to engage with from a human-wildlife conflict scenario.
So Galileo asked his friend Jay Simpson, a young National Geographic explorer, to help with the website and multimedia production.
I kept hearing more about it, and I was like, there's no way I can't be involved in this. This is just too perfect of a story. There's something about it that just has a great way of pulling people in.
Meanwhile, I contacted my former wildlife tracking instructor and author of Wolves in the Land of Salmon.
My name is David Moskowitz, and I'm a wildlife biologist and a photographer and educator, and bringing my understanding of wildlife and wolves to interpreting the things we find along the way.
Dave then asked his co-worker at Wilderness Awareness School to join us as logistics support.
We're learning about how big of a project this is that we're taking. I mean, I think we knew it was big, but just in the day-to-day and what it takes to pull off all of the branches of what we're doing is huge.
The Wolf OR7 expedition will make a beeline of OR7's dispersal route, nearly 1,200 miles by bicycle and on foot in 1 month. Exact location data of his route is protected under the Endangered Species Act, as is Wolf OR7 himself. So the route is approximate, and the intention is not to find Wolf OR7. Along the way, we will meet with people with direct experience in wolf country, and experience some of the diverse physical and cultural landscapes that OR7 crossed. So we're here at Northwest Outward Bound School in Redmond, Oregon. We put together everything we need for this expedition, namely food and water and getting our bikes ready.
This is the Millennium Falcon, our mobile home base. This is the center of operations. This is where we store all of our gear. We have all of our food, water supplies, kitchen gear, storage for hiking gear, storage for biking gear, storage for fixing stuff. I like to run a tight ship. As a sailor for many, many years, I've learned how effective it is to keep things tight when you have a lot of people and a lot of gear.
Big picture, the Wolf OR7 expedition is a quest for wild peace. It's a chance to ask questions. What does the 21st century landscape look like for wolves like OR7 in the Northwest? What is the controversy about wolf recovery all about?
However we may feel about particular wolf policy, one thing almost everybody in Wallowa County agrees on is what a spectacular landscape it is and how important it is to protect it. And when it comes to wolves, there's poll after poll that shows that most people in the state want to see wolf recovery, and they want to see wolf recovery that works for everyone. It's really complicated, but these landscapes all evolved with all of their different pieces, and that's elk, that's wolves, that's mountain lions, that's coyotes, that's the little things that are, rotting the log we're sitting on. And they all have a really important role to play, and wolves are certainly one of them. So I think having wolves back is good for the landscape. I think it says something good about us, that after trying to purposely eliminate a species from the landscape and doing a pretty darn good job of it, we're now allowing space in our hearts on the landscape to have wolves back. And I've said it before, but not all wildlife get a second chance, so I think it's really important that we get it right this time.
In the U.S., the war on wolves officially began in 1630 in what's now Boston, Massachusetts, with the first wolf bounty. Payment was given to every Englishman that brought in a wolf pelt as proof of death. Wolves once roamed throughout North America, but were systematically shot, poisoned, and trapped until the 1950s, when wolves remained only in northern Minnesota, Michigan, Alaska, and Canada. The driving rationale of the era was that wolves were aggressive, dangerous predators that left wild would decimate livestock and threaten human safety. 2 human deaths have been attributed to wolves in the last century, one in Canada and one in Alaska.
We're lucky that OR7 has been a spectacular ambassador for wolves, so that's why I'm excited that you guys are doing this, and yeah, good luck, by the way.
Check out this billboard over here. A lot of interest in wolves here in Wallowa County, and a lot of strong opinions on both sides. That one appears to be actually a group that's not terribly interested in having wolves here in Wallowa County, so it's definitely a strong contingent of people here in this area.
ODFW puts these signs up at all the major trailheads to talk about what to do if you encounter a wolf. It was definitely interesting to see those start popping up, 5-6 years ago, to show up at a trailhead. For me, it was really cool. Right. For some people, didn't feel about it that way.
Nice.
And some people feel much more
Have
like
different-
this about it. Yeah. You know, I grew up in these mountains, in this backcountry, and I always felt like there was something missing here. I mean, this is one of the wildest places left in the lower 48. So you can see it's incredibly, not just beautiful, but it's full of resources. I mean, incredible amount of wild food, access, game. Even so, when I was a child, it just felt like something was missing. You know, I'd wake up in the backcountry in the mornings and I knew that I should be hearing wolf howls. And so when I first learned they were back here, I was just elated because to me this place was becoming more wild. It was becoming more what it should be, more what it is by having wolves here. They belong here. I mean, my own tribe, the Caddo, we have the same word for wolf as we do for friend, which is Teisha. There's been the same journey for wolves that Native people have undergone in the persecution, the extirpation, and the demonizing, the misunderstanding. The Nez Perce found this as an incredibly bountiful place to live that didn't require a lot of travel to access all the resources that were available. They would just move through the seasons from the low country to the high country.
If the wolves and the Nez Perce had that kind of shared use of the land, what was the relationship between the Nez Perce and the wolves?
I can't speak for the Nez Perce, but I've been lucky enough to hear some really wonderful stories. There would be certain howls the wolves would make. They would know because of the howls what they were going to find. They would go out there and they would find deer or elk to hunt. And so they would take the elk or the deer, the game that was there, and then they would leave the gut piles and some scraps of meat as an offering back to the wolves. And the idea that wolves belong here is very intrinsic to the Nez Perce idea of how this land should be. So to me, this interest in wolves, this interest in the natural cycle of things, this interest in Native American culture, these sorts of things to me are very positive, uplifting to witness because it tells me that that 10,000-year history that's always been here that people have been so blind to for so long, people are starting to be aware of it now. They're starting to care about it. And wolves are a huge part of that.
I'm terribly excited about this opportunity, this great opportunity, to just drop into the landscape and to be following the tracks of this particular wolf as close as we can, and to be seeing the reality on the ground. You know, there's nothing like the real world.
We're doing this.
Woo! I was trying to help Dave instead.
I am feeling so excited after a year and a half of all the planning to just start and to see Oregon in a way I never have before.
When you go out into the wild, you need to be prepared for anything. And we were, you know, we started off in the most insane cold sort of snowstorm, if you could call it that.
Good stuff. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle.
Okay, let's hit the road, guys. Bliss Creek Trailhead. Let's go.
It's really exciting. You know, every expedition has months and months of planning leading up to it. And there's something magical that happens when you put your foot on that trail, when you start walking into your intentions.
I would guess at this point we have launched beyond where the Imnaha Pact is and into the wolf unknown. So we just crossed here. That's the... I'm comparing my route to some elk. And the elk are apparently better route finders than I am. Of course, they've got the added benefit of this being their living room.
We're actually out in the landscape that OR7 was born in. It's incredible to see what modern wolf country actually looks like.
sort of this two-thread journey that I feel like I'm on at the moment. The health and beauty of this landscape is astounding. And then there's what's going on inside me, just kind of imagining, what it would be like to be a wolf out here. Oh, someday. That was a heavy backpack.
It is for nice in the woods, right? We were probably the first people of the year, at least on foot, if not on skis, to head over the mountain pass that we took to get out of the Eagle Cap.
Holy shit, that's a big bear.
That's
Eh?
a wolf.
Wolf?
There's the wolf tracks.
Really?
From this morning.
I can't see it. That's flipping huge, dude.
Yeah. They're wolf-sized.
Holy smoke. Unbelievable.
Right?
Yeah. So this is a lone wolf.
Lone wolf.
What? Holy moly. They're as big as they say.
Jay, we got wolf tracks up here.
Holy cow.
That's something I'm
Are you
not really.
serious? My first wolf tracks. Confirmed.
Well, that is flipping
Nice,
fantastic.
dude.
What I love about wildlife tracking is it is a science and an art. So you get to see the size, and this wolf track was about the size of my palm, and it was in snow, so it looked huge. And then to go into more of the art of wildlife tracking and to imagine, how big was this wolf and where was it going, where did it come from, and what was it doing there, and pretty wild knowing we weren't that far from a wolf last night.
What was beautiful back there is seeing his track next to, or her track next to a fresh deer track as well. Same sort of timing it looks like, according to David. So this is exciting. Having fun out here, guys. Having fun. That's what it's all about.
This is full of surprises.
What was even more special was to see that this wolf was essentially taking the exact same route that we were taking to get out of that valley. So for it was maybe about 7-8 hours we were following this wolf's tracks. And you could see by the tracks how this wolf was moving at quite a speed and dropping deep into the snow in places. And there was just something about the landscape suddenly became alive in a completely different way.
I'm ready.
Well, here we go. We've got a bike, we've got a pack. Who knows what lies ahead?
To cover the ground in between and keep up with the wolf's pace, we switched to our cyclocross bikes at the trailhead. After days of post-holing in the footsteps of guys who are all bigger than me, getting on a bike is like flying.
We want left, and then we want right.
Yeah.
We woke up, we were getting a good start. We started on tarmac, it was smooth sailing, and it was all good until I had my first flat.
That's it.
Look at that.
Something sharp. I don't know what it is. It's a goat head seed. It's like a thorn. It eats tires for breakfast.
Here's the thing.
There's these thorns, and they're just like the tiniest little things. They could get stuck under your fingernail if they really wanted to. They're just tiny, and it's incredible how such a small hole can just bring you down. It was just flats all over the place. We couldn't get anywhere without someone like pumping up their tires, getting it all ready, and then we're about to roll out, and they look back and their tire's flat again.
Great. Changing a tire.
No, I've only used the
I know.
It was one puncture after another. You got to stop, change your tire, find the puncture, patch it, put it back in, get your wheel back on, cycle 5 meters, and stop again because now the other wheel's gone. So, you know.
Actually, why not? Besides about 20 flat tires, severe thorn damage to our bikes mixed with a local rancher who suggested we not take the route we had planned to do. So we had a long reroute which involved pushing our bikes up steep slopes.
It was just insane terrain that we ended up crossing unexpectedly. And we got to see really how big it is out the back there in some of these ranches and how easy it would have been for a wolf, such as OR7, to cross some of this land completely unnoticed.
We set an ambitious schedule and we set an ambitious route for ourselves, given the fact that none of us had done any long distance bicycle trekking and none of us had worked together as a group. It wasn't really feasible to sort out every section of every day of travel. So each day it's kind of a little bit of a discovery of like, okay, so what's up for tomorrow?
It's taken us nearly 12 hours, more than 12 hours, 13 hours to get into camp, when it should have taken about 3 or 4.
Learned how to change a tire, huh?
I do that. I can say I know how to do that. Check out these bubbles. Says it all. You see, one of those might also be great, Jay. With a hand, I think that would also be good. Yeah. The big picture is we've got a bit of a morning where we are catching up. We are posting social media, we're updating the website, we're checking our maps. We've done a whole thing this morning already around repairing all the bikes from yesterday's epic. And we're going to be ready to roll in about 45 minutes.
Leaving the sagebrush steppe, which left our bike tires but not our spirits deflated, we were joined for a few days by David de Rothschild, who helped fund our project through Explore and Sculpt the Future Foundation. He brought us new tires, tire liners, and tons of patch kits as we headed towards the Strawberry Mountains.
People will be naturally fascinated by the story of how does a group of people traverse across the state of Oregon into Northern California. How do you do that? And by default, they're going to start asking questions and start learning about the amazing environment you traveled through, the pressures on the environment, the systems that you had to contend with, and those all will relate back to the wolf and other species.
We're at a time in human evolution, in global evolution, where there are no excuses anymore for not knowing what constitutes right action. And there are no excuses anymore for not being able to engage with the holistic picture of both the landscapes we're in, the species we're dealing with, and ourselves as a society.
You know, there's a reason we have biodiversity, because everything has this interdependency that supports itself. You know, it's an age-old thing, but every action creates a reaction. And if we're very naive to think that by just wiping out a species, it's not going to affect us in some way, our ability to live on this planet, our survival as a species, as one species, is dependent on all the other species and our understanding of where we play in that system.
We're at war with ourselves and we're not even aware of it. And we're obliterating ourselves by obliterating these other species that are integral, not only to the ecological functioning of the planet, but also our internal world.
We're in the Strawberry Mountain Wilderness, and this is very important. OR7 expedition is one of the events of the 50th anniversary of the Wilderness Act in the United States. It's important that this is, I think, one of 3 or 4 different wilderness areas that Wolf OR7 actually moved through during his journey south and west. So yeah, it's great to be out here, to be in this wilderness, and to be probably the first group of people out here this season. I mean, we've seen no tracks of people up here.
One of the things that a lot of habitat models use for predicting good wolf habitat is low human populations. And clearly here in northeastern Oregon, definitely a low human population, which is quite striking.
We set out to learn about the life and science of a modern wolf, beyond the stereotypes, hearsay, and fairy tales. At the end of the day, it became as much a journey to learn about wolves as a quest into how humans work with conflict. Can modern civilization and wild nature coexist?
When the first wolf came into Oregon, it was apparent that the state was not ready for addressing the challenges that we were going to have. So we called a meeting with the federal and state wildlife managers and asked the question, what are we going to do about developing a management plan for the state that'll allow us to do something other than grab these animals and take them back where they came from?
Eventually we came up with a wolf plan. In the immediate time, wolves were shot by poachers, hit by cars, and so it wasn't until B300 later became known as OR2, some people call her Sophie, which is actually OR7's mother. Once she came to Oregon and was seen in Oregon, we've had wolves in the state pretty much ever since. So that's sort of the start of wolf recovery. Killing an endangered species is a pretty big deal. It's not something to be taken lightly. The ultimate compromise was we have very, very low recovery numbers, but while there was a low population of wolves, there would be a high bar for when those wolves could be killed. We have a compensation program in this state. So if you have an animal that is confirmed killed by wolves, you can get full compensation for full market value of that cow.
The wolf compensation plan is a Band-Aid. The extra days that we spend, the extra hours that we spend out here repairing fences, we're not going to get covered for that. We're not going to get covered for livestock weight loss, the lower conception rates.
And that's from wolf packs.
Yep.
Running cattle.
Yep. What we can actually live with is if those wolves become depredators of livestock, we'd be able to take them away or take them out.
If we had 1,000 wolves in the landscape, we could have a very different discussion, but we had people calling for hunting seasons on wolves when we had less than a dozen in the entire state. There's some people who will never be happy until every wolf is shot, and there's some people who will never be happy if we have a plan that allows wolves to be killed for any reason.
There's like no one out there.
Yeah, especially this time of year. It's definitely not that hard to imagine that you could move as a wolf or any wild animal or a person without being seen for quite a while in this landscape. I was just so happy to wake up under the pine trees, the sun's coming in my tent, and all I have to do today is pack up my stuff, get on a bike, and cycle. Dreams can come true.
And
here we are.
And how different is the reality to the dream? You know what I mean? I mean, I never imagined in any of our planning that I would stand somewhere like this. There's nothing stopping more wolves doing exactly what he's done, you know?
And who else is out there?
Yeah.
Checklist. Do we have, yes. Everyone got a spare tube on their bike? Check. Anybody not have a patch kit in their bike?
Edward Abbey.
Uh-oh.
Final paragraph of advice. Do not burn yourselves out. Be as I am, a reluctant enthusiast, a part-time crusader, a half-hearted fanatic. It is not enough to fight for the land. It is even more important to enjoy it while you still can, while it is still here. So get out there. Hunt fish, climb the mountains, bag the peaks, run the rivers, encounter the forest, find the grizzly. Sit still a while and appreciate the silence. Breathe deep of the sweet and lucid air. And I promise you this one sweet victory over our enemies, over those desk-bound people with their eyes hypnotized by desk calculators and their hearts locked up in safe deposit boxes. I promise you this, you will outlive the bastards. Enjoy.
So we're biking down Forest Road 37 here. We're in northeastern Oregon. And these signposts are an important part of how we navigate the landscape. And actually part of our team isn't with us, so we're using these things to make sure we're on track so we can find each other and find our way through the landscape. What's interesting about this particular road sign is that we're not the only species using it for keeping track of each other. Because if you look, see how narrow it is here? This is all from bears biting this tree, and then they'll also rub on it as well. And you can see it's just completely coated with bear hair. So probably just about every bear that comes through here is gonna stop and take a gander at who's been here, kind of through their sense of smell rather than visually, which is how we use it. And probably something similar is going on for Wolf OR7 when he was traveling through the landscape. He was looking for signposts of wolves to know if there's other wolves in the landscape, because he would maybe want to avoid areas that were there's a resident wolf pack, because he might not be welcome there, or he may be looking for another lone wolf, preferably a female, to set up shop with. And that's maybe part of what happened in the Cascade.
So we're breaking camp in National Forest lands west of the Strawberry Mountains. It's our last day in these forests, and it's been fascinating thinking about how this looks like gorgeous wolf habitat. There's tons of different animals here. There's other predators on the land, but yet there's no wolves.
All right, so we have a different day today than we've had in days past. We're about to leave the comfort and security of the pine trees. And much like OR7 had new obstacles and risks as he left the security of forested land and public lands, we're going to have to deal with some private lands and potentially some ranch lands and ranchers that hopefully we've got public right-of-ways to get through their property.
Shit. We had consulted maybe 3 different maps and it had been unclear. There's about a 4-mile stretch before a county road that we were trying to get to. And this 4-mile stretch, it turned out, was private land. Not only was it private land, it was very clearly marked with a sign that said absolutely no trespassing or hunting.
We have to go go right back to camp and then head down to the highway probably, and then spend the whole day biking on the highway. That's also going to add just off the top of my head, it's probably adding 30 miles to our route.
Party!
Clearly we're not wolves, we're humans, and thus we are, it was important to me that we respect human agreements, such as private property. So we turned around and spent the next couple hours heading down the Ochiko forest into the high desert. It was a super, super tiring and exhausting and rather epic detour.
We got a long way to go still today. And look what we're heading into. It. We could still hit some pretty wild weather.
It makes you think of how some of these animals, like wolves, you know, when they do disperse like this or move to new territories or need to cross landscapes, they don't always choose a sunny day necessarily or a beautiful moonlit night. You know, sometimes the weather might even push them out of survival, out of desperation, out of discomfort. We were certainly moving out of discomfort and desperate to get to camp.
To summarize, we had what? Snow, sun, hail, a little bit of rain, lots of wind.
The last half of the afternoon was a push. We got onto that highway and because of the traffic and the danger of a very short sort of shoulder on the road, we got back into the swing of cycling 10 minutes on with one person in the lead and slipstreaming with the rest of the group. You feel a bit, I suppose, like a migratory animal in a sense. You know, you've got to sort of stick with the herd for your own sort of survival.
For me, after having spent however long back in the wild, and then all of a sudden you get to Highway 20, it's sensory overload and craziness and terrifying.
Quarter to 8. So
yeah,
I think it's 1 hour, 40 minutes.
I think it's time for bacon and eggs.
That was all right. That's good.
Bacon and eggs?
I'd like bacon and eggs and hash browns and a coffee with cream. I think we're almost halfway.
We made it to Brothers, which somewhere within this vicinity between Hampton and Brothers, it's likely that Wolf 007 crossed this highway on his way heading south. So busy roads can act as a fence often for wildlife. If they're super busy, such as I-5, wildlife can't cross them at all. It's the mid-traffic or sort of the mid-busy roads that are the most dangerous for wildlife. Because they will try to cross, but it's often too busy and they can't gauge the rhythm. Super happy to be human.
Berries like to eat.
We can walk into a cafe and order a big breakfast.
Hash browns.
Fresh served.
Toast.
Warm.
Coffee.
Bacon.
Are all done with your
eggs.
Toast.
How much toast do you think you have?
I'm in heaven. Brothers is one of these amazing places you can only find in the American West, where it's a town. It's got one building basically on one side of the road,
And on the other side of the road, there's another building, which is usually the school. And the primary building houses not only the gas station, the coffee shop, the post office, the bar, it's the cultural hub, in fact.
What's your name?
Dixie.
Dixie? So you think that somebody spotted Wolf 407?
I'm sure. That's when, in fact, we could hear him out here. Probably him, howling out over here. Because it's a different howl than down by the 71 mile marker. Somebody seen him went across. He said he cleared a fence about that high, never touched it.
Wow. Yes.
The door into the cafe it was filled with memorabilia and all sorts of interesting local stuff. And there were about 2 or 3 pages of photographs and writing there around wolf hunting that had taken place, I believe, in Idaho. And it wasn't the hunting that was low light for me, really. It was just the celebration of the images that showed glorification of the dominance we have over other species. I think one of the big themes of this expedition and one of the big insights that we're having as a team is the challenges that wolves face in this century compared to when they were more prevalent in the landscape 100 years ago. The roads are more numerous, the traffic is more numerous, the traffic is faster. OR7 slowly has become quite road savvy. And we'll see further on when we get further south on his route, some of the other big roads that he crossed on his journey. He's obviously figured it out.